Hey, welcome. So I thought today we'd do something a little different, looking at a report that will help us sort of find our ways in this AI and MT jungle. So basically, they've used a lot of LLM models and they've placed them against machine translation for comparison. So here they are telling us which models they've tested and to which stage they are. So for example, this GPT-4 here, it tells you that's the June 2023 version because they update those every once in a while, so they get better. So that gives you an idea. And also here they have used these machine translation to perform the same tests. And we see here big names, those that are really solid in the language pairs they've chosen. So they've done English to German and English to Spanish. And in here, in this first part, that part belongs to the LLMs, and they give you the kind of prompts they've been using. And that can be interesting for you if you are starting to use LLMs. Well, these are some ideas you can build from. So these are designed for when you connect with an API. But if you're just chatting with your LLM, well, you can tweak these so that it matches better what you're doing with it. One thing interesting that they are saying and that people often don't realize is that LLMs they like to add explanations. So you need to sort of weed that out in the way you're creating your prompt to make sure that they don't add extra stuff that you didn't ask for, because they are called generative AIs, and that's what they do. They want to generate stuff, and some of that you don't need when you're translating. Well, you just need, the translation. So you don't need extra context or something about the Greek root of a word or something like that. So that's interesting that they're mentioning that. So that's something that to keep in mind when you're using LLMs. And one of the first metrics they've tested is how long it takes to perform the translation. And we know, as you see here on the right, that MT models are very fast. Now, let's see that with a bigger pointer size, okay? So we have here MT models, and we see that if we compare speed, there's just like no contest. They are super fast compared to these systems. So some are better than others, that's true, but they are still a lot slower when you are asking them to translate than using a machine translation system that's made only for that, to machine translate. Okay, so let's now talk about translation quality. To test that, they've not done human evaluation. They've used Comet, which is an automated system to test translation quality, and it's considered a good metric. In here, my understanding of their graphs here is that light blue is an LLM and that deep blue is an MT system. And what we see that's interesting is that those that perform the best, there's not a huge difference in quality between them. And here we are testing English to Spanish in general domain. Now, the same test, general domain still, but English to German. Okay, so we see here how they perform. And as they note, DeepL ranks first. It's a known fact that when German is involved in a language pair, usually DeepL will come up on top. Now they've adapted also the test to healthcare translation. And you can start to see here a trend. It seems that MT has an advantage here when you're dealing with healthcare domain. So that's in English to German, and that is seen even more when you're doing English to German, but for the legal domain. So there seems to be a trend here that some MTs will be better regarding to quality. Now they give you here a breakdown of what happens specifically with each LLM that has been tested. And that can tell you some things that are interesting for you. So for example, one that is widely known, let's look at GPT-4 Turbo. It scores highs and it performs best among all GPT's model in English to Spanish general and English to German legal. Now we come to my favorite of this analysis, which is the weak spot analysis. And this is very good because it sort of pinpoints areas where an MT or an LLM will be specifically weak, and that means that they will have the tendency to create an error, and depending on which type of error that is and how frequent it is, that gives you an estimate of how much work you'll have to put into fixing these mistakes, which is very important if you're using that kind of automated system. So for example, if we look at this one, so translated DNT, do not translate. So there's, for example, a name, an acronym, something like that, that you wouldn't want to be translated, and the system translated it. So that's something that you'll need to go back and fix. And the same thing in reverse, a false DNT, so a part of the text that was mistakenly left untranslated. So these are things that if you know that your LLM or your MT will have a tendency to translate or not translate, and that it consistently outputs the same kind of word, well, you can do a batch processing of that. You can do a search and replace, and that can be solved really fast. But if that's a hallucination or a mistranslation or a literal translation, that will involve more work, and that will take you more time to fix that. So that's interesting to look at these metrics. I think that's a very good idea that they've done that. So let's zoom in a little so that we can see some things. Okay, so English to Spanish, general domain. And here you have the breakdown by LLM model and by type of error. So for example, we were talking about translated DNTs, which is here light green, and false DNTs, which is this sort of salmon color. And we can see that, for example, the Llama 2 model has a big issue with false DNT. Claude will have a big issue with translated DNT, and so forth. Those that we'd need to look at would be mistranslations. So here, if we see in Palm 2 what's going on, that's a problem. So yeah, that's something that you want to keep in mind. And so that's for English to Spanish. And here we apply the same thing to English to German, general domain. And then if you look at what's happening here in legal domain, for example, you can see that the Llama 2 will be hallucinating a lot. Okay, so you know, and that seems to be the same tendency as well with healthcare English to German. And now here again, they've given you, after those graphics, the breakdown of what has happened, the type of errors they found. So I think that's a very good read. If you're thinking into getting into using an LLM, check that so that you can see basically what to expect. And now another thing that is interesting is price comparison, because we hear a lot of different things, so that it can cost a lot of money to use LLMs. That's true, but that depends what you're doing and how you're using them. So basically, the way they've looked at it to make the price comparison here in this article, they've converted tokens to word, averaging 4 tokens per word. And that's very good, because we used to word counting or character counting when looking into translation. So that will be good. And so here you get your results, okay, with your numbers. And now what is very interesting to look at is this graph. So you see the pricing, okay? So if you do a lot of translation and you're using DeepL Pro, well, you will be spending a lot more money than if you are using GPT-4 Turbo. But then again, that you need to compare that to how much time you'll need to spend on fixing the mistakes, and it depends also on what kind of quality level you want. So that gives you a very good idea of the pricing. So depending on how you're using your machine translation or your LLM translation, what you do with it, who the translation is for, etc., you need to look at these and compare this to the weak spots that we've seen before. And if speed is something that is important, well, you need to consider that as well. If you are a translator and you are using an LLM while you are translating, so for example, if you do that going from segment to segment, you need to know that this will slow down significantly your translation process. So it's something to bear in mind. And I think this article was very interesting. Now, note that I've recorded this video on January 19th, 2024. And as things are evolving as we speak, so stay tuned. Maybe follow Intento on LinkedIn, so that next time they publish a report, you can grab it when it's warm coming out of the oven, so that you have the freshest information. So that's it for this video. I hope you'll find it useful, and if you like that kind of content, well, let me know in the comments. And I'll be talking to you in the next one. Bye bye.